And I'm sitting next to, we just said let us talk. Well, I'm sitting next to an iconic playwright, an extraordinary labor historian and writer, a veteran director of opera and theater, classic and contemporary. And pretty soon we're going to be joined by the extraordinary Mark Povinelli. So we've got 30 minutes, Commerce, on the stage to talk about some questions that I have to put to you. I want to, we call this talk resisting theater that resists, resisting performance. And I guess I want to just start by asking, in what sense does this play, The Return of Benjamin Lane, perform resistance, not in just what it is, but how it came together and what it does. And Marcus, I'm going to ask you.
You should ask Naomi first.
Oh, she'll be asked, believe me.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to tell you that this play had its origins in protest. Back in 2017, Naomi and I were to give a lecture in the House of World Cultures in Berlin, and we decided that during our lecture, 3/4 of the way through, an actor dressed as Benjamin Lay would come out from behind the curtain and disrupt the whole proceeding. And the curators of this conference loved the idea until they found out that we wanted to use a little person actor. Whereupon they became very anxious and then withdrew their support for that part of our presentation. We considered this to be censorship, so we resigned from the conference. And since we suddenly had a free weekend, I flew to England where Naomi lives, and knowing that we were onto something by the way the curators reacted, we started writing the play. We had just written a 10-minute monologue, but that is the origin of the play. So in my mind's eye, the poster out here should have a banner, sort of a banner above it that says, "Banned in Berlin."
Of course, wonderful plays written by these people together, and Naomi, we know your plays, but also your essays like Writing as Transgression. There's a new generation of theater makers who need to be encouraged to transgress. I think I have some understanding that you feel that theater should be transgressive. In what sense is this play? Performance of this.
Well, I mean, I think when you see Benjamin Lay, a lot of that is answered. But I would say that for myself, I mean, I've never written just for the sake of writing. I've always seen and hoped my work would be part of a larger social justice movement. And so I have worked with Marcus's work for, I think, two other plays. Monthly Spare, reading Marcus's book Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, which is always a history from below, how Marcus writes, and also for my play, The Lord of the Land. So before we actually began to write, we had this connection of a certain vision, a way of seeing history, and now a way of writing together.
A happy way of writing together.
Yeah.
You talked about your collaboration as a very productive and not a dissenting.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen, and people seem to think that, the more drama and fighting that goes on, the better it will be, but no, Marcus and I mean, we had vision, a similar vision, but always learning, and I would say I learned more from Marcus than he did from me. But we had disagreements, but it was always for the greater good. We didn't let our egos get ahead of us.
We always had this image that our writing would be a commons, and nobody owned it. We were free to use it, transform it, improve it, and I think that helped us.
I think that's a very different kind of Talking about Monthly Spare, I think many of you know that Ron started a collaboration with Naomi in 1991. So you too, okay? And we've talked about this before, you maybe don't have the same view, expressed that you don't have the same view of theater as being a force for change. It is what it is. Is that what you said? Are you disagreeing?
Could you rephrase that?
Oh, could you rephrase it?
No, you rephrase it. You know.
Okay. Do you think theater does change the world?
No.
That's the
The
conversation.
world, the street changes the world.
Woo!
We change, possibly we change a bit of consciousness, but we don't change anything. We just contribute to what is a much larger sense of change that hopefully is happening in the street, not here.
And you come from that generation of people, Frary and Boal, and people who use theater in a very explicit.
Yes, look, I mean, I grew up theatre-wise in South America just 3 years before the coup, the right-wing coup happened. So I was involved in the student liberation movement. I was involved in singing at universities. We are underdeveloped. Let us change the world. And then the coup happened, and I stayed here. But I stayed in England thanks to having my grandfathers were English soldiers, and I was allowed to stay here when my folks in Brazil said, "Don't come back." But that was because things were happening in the street, not because of what we had done. It was just something much bigger than that. You know, that's important. And obviously, we hope that what we do is important. But at the same time, it's a drop in the ocean.
And those drops, when we all put them, can make a big bucket.
There you go. There's the poet in you.
Mark, you, besides being this actor of stage and screen and television and everything you do, and the past president of the LPA, you write a lot of pretty passionate advocacy. And one of the pieces I read, you said, this was about Harvard shows, right? You said, we don't need another hero, or something like that. We need people who will speak to us with truth and authenticity. Is that correct?
Sounds good if I say that.
Do you think you just spent this time passionately advocating as Finlay? Do you think a place like this, Perform Resistance, did they change anything?
Well, it's hard to top what Ron said. I mean, I think that's exactly right. That we would be it would be a lot of hubris to think that everyone here is going to, go and completely change the environment we're in right now. But I do think that it's a lot harder to hopefully, it's a lot harder to walk out of here and erase this play from your consciousness. And that's to great credit to the three people sitting next to me. And I think that, it isn't the thing that is going to launch everything, just like you all said. But I would, there's pieces of art that you wake up the next day and it's still in your brain, rattling around, and you can't let go of. If that's what we contributed, that would be a big step, I think, because I don't want people to let go of that last question in this play.
You just shared your thing about this, but we had an interesting conversation in Pittsburgh where you talked about rage. Somebody whose name will not be mentioned had just said something that enraged you. It could have been the president. And you said, I'm enraged. And I thought, where do you, as an actor, does it serve you?
Well, I mean, sure. Like, it's pretty easy for me personally to when they brought the vermin King Charles II back to the throne, it was pretty hard not to have a very clear image. So, I mean, this play feels so in the right moment. It was really prescient. I mean, certainly there were plenty of issues going on when you all wrote this, not to be ignored, but they have really, the tinderbox has been lit. And so much of this play means something different now than it did even 2 years ago when we did it in London.
Yeah. I remember seeing it in development. Remember we were online together during the pandemic, just after. And then in London, in Pittsburgh, and here it's going to Philadelphia, changed each time. Something very important about the whole process of this, which I think is pretty remarkable, is the collaboration. You might not agree that collaboration is necessarily politically progressive, but in this case, would you not say the different drops in the bucket work together? There's been a kind of solidarity here. You two have worked together for years, working at distance. Your collaboration has been extraordinarily lengthy and persistent. Does the process you use here have something to do with the desire to change the status quo? Does the way this play has come together also speak to resistance?
Well, for me, certainly having solidarity, knowing that these three people have spoken out, have made art, have made stances that speak truth to power. It gives me much more courage to align myself with them and do the same. So there's certainly strength in that solidarity.
You know, I wanted to say too, you know, that this play is very prescient, especially in the last couple of months. For me as a writer, it has also been very prescient in the last 15 months of the U.S. co-sponsored genocide in Gaza. And to me, this very much also speaks to that, and especially there's a part in the play where they talk about the uprising. He and Musa, and what happens to him because he's speaking of uprising. You know, students who've been disappearing from campus, you know. What I love about it is it's not locked into a certain period, not just 2 months or 2 years, but decades of what Benjamin Lay talks about, oppression, colonialism. I just wanted to touch on about the collaboration, is that, you know, that I feel for myself as an artist and being part of the justice movement, I don't know what my work can do. I don't know how it can be abused, but I want it to be abused. All I can do is make it and send it out there, you know, it's like, and having for myself the humility not to think that I'm creating a revolution. That is done by many, many people, you know, organizers, justice workers, artists, all together, you know, that as the commons that we talk about, we have to do it all together, and art is a part of that, just a part.
I'd say that there is what is also interesting is that our attempt is also to do good theatre, to do a fabulous play in a way that has the opportunity for a great performance and a wonderful work with my designers in various different formats, because this is now the fourth format, the fourth iteration of the production, and my designers have been sensational, and we hope that apart from it being important, it's also good theatre.
It's gotta be good.
It's got to be good theatre.
It might have been over a drink, it probably was over a drink, where you said, what do you think people are going to take away from this?
Well, here's what I hope for, and I'll introduce this thought by referring to Howard Zinn. Do people here know who Howard Zinn is? Friend of Naomi's. Howard Zinn said to me years ago, he said, you know, I go around the country and I meet with different political groups, people trying to make change. He said, and you know what? There are more people doing that work now. I think this also applies to this moment. More people doing that work now than there were at the peak of the movements of the 60s and 70s. But here's the difference. They don't feel connected to each other. Part of the response of powers that be to those movements was to try to fragment and divide them, to break down the movement culture that made everyone think that they were basically fighting for the same common purpose. And what I love about Benjamin Lay is that he provides us with that unity. All forms of oppression are linked. And you saw Mark embody this on the stage against class oppression, against the oppression of race and slavery, against gender oppression, against the violent oppression of animals, against environmental destruction. He had a religious vision of how all these things were connected, but it need not be merely religious or only religious. It's an ethical vision. It's a vision of how you want to be in the world. So I think Benjamin Lay is kind of a model in thinking about how we can connect all of these many causes and build a movement that really can make change. In other words, we need him with us. We need that vision.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, sorry.
You say their words. No,
So much we could talk about here, but just one more comment. You said when we were talking about this, you said, I don't know if working together is collaboration is necessarily progressive or solidarity is necessarily progressive. I like, this is my 2 cents. What I see here with the generosity and the collegiality of this whole production team and everybody who works on it, that's not just, oh, darling, that's lovely, let's make wonderful theater, which it is, but that kind of generosity and union of practicality and vision is in itself a kind of resistance against the status quo. Yeah. I think in our field. Yeah. That's my opinion. 100%. So I'm just going to share. I appreciate what you've done so much. I'm very proud to be sitting next to you. Do we have time? We have 10 minutes for more questions before I hear they actually, after this, there's books upstairs, there's drink, there's some conviviality, but let's take a few minutes and see if, we say, let's talk together, let's hear what you have to say. Questions? Marty?
Yeah, I was at a demonstration in Lower Manhattan yesterday to focus on what's going on in the government in this country. You know, there were many, many signs, and 95% of those signs had to do with either, a demand or some act of resistance. And there was one sign that was held by a 5-year-old, and the sign said, "Where is the love?" And I have to say, with all of the signs that they sort of had minimal effect on me, but that sign sort of stopped me in my tracks. So my question to all of you, because you engage in acts of resistance through theater, is where do you see love in resistance and in speaking truth to power?
I mean, for me as a writer, I feel, resistance against oppression is an act of love, and so for me, that always has to be, and learning from the beloved community, that always has to be central. And as Ron, and all of us here, and we're talking about fringe theater, me too, in terms of the love of this theater and this production where nobody made any money, to me, that's also part of it.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
There's the famous line by Che Guevara who said that any revolutionary must be motivated by the highest love.
And said that too. Yeah.
And I do think Benjamin Lay was a prophet of love.
Yes.
Love was, he said, I love you, fellow Quakers, if you just don't enslave other people. So, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things I find most beautiful about this show is that, sure, I mean, it's the line that Sarah says, your rage is kind-hearted against the slave keepers, but it's not sustenance. I mean, there's nothing behind rage, it does have to be fueled by love, not vengeance or revenge or any of those things or retribution. It's got to be fueled by love.
There's a question over here.
Yes, I can make it for you. I can't remember how we both that meeting. First of all, a comment. Awesome. Thank you. It's wonderful to, a couple of years ago, Uptown musical opens about an architect of the central bank who was considered, portrayed as a populist and an anti-slavery proponent who, in all of his voluminous writings, never wrote one anti-slavery tract, and he was also from the 18th century. His name was Alexander Hamilton. And it's so nice to see an 18th century figure portrayed who actually is an anti-slavery activist.
Thank you for saying that.
My second comment and question and query is the dialectical relationship, right, between the circuits of accumulation that are created with the organization of Atlantic slavery, right? And the concentration of capital and the institutionalization of capital in economic, law, philosophy, all these ways in our concept of reason, all these ways in which it targets something specific. And I think one of the words that stood out for me when you were up there is banished. So what the increasing concentration and intensity of centralization of capital banishes people from their homes, banishes memory, silences protest, but it also sets into circulation contact with the peoples who are banished, and they reorganize and they reconstitute, and they come up with new forms and new ideas and new conceptions and new perceptions and new lenses. And I took away from here that this is a dialectic we have to be very aware of, because when there is a moment of intensifying capital centralization and accumulation in these new circuits that are arising, we have to look out for where memory wants to be erased, where it wants to be silenced, and where these people where they want to banish us to. So if anybody wants to comment on your perception of that and its and the centrality of that to your work, please.
Well, as the person asking the question knows perfectly well, that's what I've written about pretty much my whole life. Am I right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's the people who are banished, it's the people who are vanquished, who frequently have the ideas that point to a new set of possibilities. And to understand, I mean, Naomi and I very self-consciously wanted this play to be a history from below, a poetry from below, theater from below, because we feel that, look, this ordinary working man, Benjamin Lay, who had very little education, made this incredible breakthrough at a time when almost all European settlers in the Americas thought that slavery was a perfectly normal and legitimate institution. He's not the person that you would have predicted to make this breakthrough, but he did it because he was a sailor, because he was a shepherd, and because of this set of experiences that he had. So our hope for this, or at least mine, I should speak for myself, is that here's a person who can inspire conviction, courage, hope, and action. Because that was the essence of his life, those four things. So, thank you for
And how brave, Marcus, I think, for a writer of, a renowned writer of books, to then collaborate with somebody who does theater. Very different. That's new territory. That's great. Is there a question over here? Oh, no, here.
Oh, here. I guess my question was to find out more about the relationship between Benjamin Franklin and Benjamin Lay, you know, because in terms of abolition, or maybe if there were any letters and correspondences between them. And then also because I also wanted to know if Mayor Adams is coming tomorrow. Since there's the document up there, and what brought upon that document, and, you know, his interest in the show.
Well, let's all call his office and ask him to be here.
You might have something you want to say.
Sorry?
You might have something you want to say.
I'd like the opportunity. Ben Franklin and Ben Lay knew each other. Ben Franklin did publish his book and did leave his name off the cover page because he didn't want to lose business from wealthy Quakers. But Benjamin Franklin was an enslaver. And so I don't know if it's exactly right to say that they were friends. I think Benjamin Lay would have been very critical of him, as you saw in the play, as anyone else. Now, to his credit, later in his life, Ben Franklin did become an abolitionist. But it was many years after Benjamin Lay, and when he did, he bragged about having published Benjamin Lay. The very person whose name, he wouldn't put his name on the title page, but he was very proud of it, 40 years later.
splice it up into TikToks.
There's a graphic novel, you know that, it's upstairs. There's a wonderful graphic novel. Marcus, the book, the script. We have people here from educational programs. We're getting the word out to students. We're getting the word out. We've got affinity groups, Quakers, and little persons, and anyone who wants to learn more. But there's always more to do. It's never enough. So what are we doing? As much as we can.
Maybe interested that the play has evolved a lot since we started working on it 3 years ago, and it has changed a lot, and it has changed, its meaning has changed with the changing world. But one of the things that we have done, very brave of Naomi and Marcus, is that they allowed me to cut the play down to 50 minutes. And in that particular version, what I call the agit-prop version, we took it to the Little People of America's conference. And we did it also at the University of Honolulu, Hawaii, University of Hawaii. And all it was Mark sitting on a little rostrum with a camera on him, blowing up his face behind him, and just doing the text without any props, without any no hair, and it was amazing. It was amazing how it held. Now that is the agit-prop version. This version here, for my money, is infinitely more interesting. It looks at his uncertainties. It looks at the man's troubled life when he says, you know, how many sheep have I counted and still no sleep? The man was a troubled man. My fear of doing this play was that we would be doing a hagiography, that this man is a saint. He's not. I'm not interested in saints, personally. You know, I'm interested in human beings who are troubled and who have passions. And in fact, you know, it occurs to me that there's something very interesting that happens in this play. Sorry, I'm moving around. The definition of theatre is what? The definition of theatre, according to Lope de Vega, one of the great Spanish writers, is two actors, bare boards, and a passion. That is theatre. Is this not theatre? One actor only. Plenty of passion, yes, but one actor only. The interesting thing about the play, for me, is that this is a dialogue. Throughout, what they have done is they have created a dialogue so that the second actor is in fact the audience. The audience who actually undergoes change in the course of the play. They start with one identity, you start with one identity, and your identity changes. And we lose track of time, so suddenly you become the Quaker people in 1740. And that is a dialogue. So we do have here, even going back to the very initial definition of theatre, we do have, I think, what is a dialogue.
And some of you become enslavers and herring gulls.
I'm sorry if I called you that.
But it's very interesting that this also, in our agit-prop version, which takes away a lot of his troubledness, it still works. It still inspires. But for my money, I find the inspiration that comes from the trouble, the overcoming, the victories that he has to achieve, more inspiring than the clear version of it. But if you guys have got universities and want to invite Mark to come and read the play.
We want this conversation to continue and grow to that point. And that's what Playhouse Creatures Theatre Company is all about. That's our mission. And so that's part of what this is for. We could go on and on. Can I say one thing about the people I'm sitting next to? Those of us who write about what they do will repeat again and again. The ingredient that's here that I find the most politically important to me is the fact that the respect for the audience is baked into everything. That we're all part of this. I don't think every piece of theater and every piece of art I encounter is like that, but I think it's an absolute focus of what goes on here. I want to mark that and thank the people here for the work that they do. Thank you so much.